Alright, so we are doing this video today. If you are new to my channel, my name is Allie. This is Allie with Books, and we are going to be talking about some of the books that I DNF'd in 2022 and some of the books that I did not like in 2022. So I tried to film this video about a week ago and I just could not get through it. Just couldn't do it. I don't know what was going on. I just had to stop filming, and I think that it was probably because I felt like I was ranting too much, and I didn't want this to be like a ranting video. I wanted it to be more of like a casual, not super serious, just regular, fun, lighthearted video. And I didn't want to take it way too seriously like I was before. So we are just going to be hanging out. It's just going to be us two, us besties, us friends. And I have my coffee. If you haven't made yourself a coffee or a drink or whatever you want to have, go make that right now and then come back to this video, and we're just going to talk about some of the books I didn't like. I guess a typical disclaimer of, if you enjoyed these books, that is totally fine. This is not any sort of slight against you. We all have different tastes in books, and that is totally fine. I think that that's really cool. It's what makes the book community so much fun. And I am really sorry if I say I don't like a book that you love. It happens, it's life. So I figured that we could start off by going through the books that I DNF'd in 2022, which I DNF'd a lot of books. So the first book that I ended up DNFing was Lore by Alexandra Bracken. And if you've been following me for a while, you will know that in March of last year, I did a video where I read books by authors who share my first name. And that was in my birth month. That was like the whole theme of the video. And my first name is Alexandra, so I decided to read my first Alexandra Bracken book. And I was really excited about it. I was like, she's a very popular author. I'm sure that I will love this book. I love Greek mythology. I thought it was going to be really interesting. And I could not get past like the 30% mark. It just was not for me. And the bummer was that it started off really interesting. I really liked the first chapter. But then once it went past the first chapter, I just lost so much interest. I felt like the entire story came to a halt. I just didn't really connect with the main character. I thought she was kind of boring. And I wasn't really interested in any of the other characters. So I ended up DNFing that book, and I did not love it. The next book is kind of where I got stuck the last time I made this video, because I felt like I was going on this like insane, really long rant, and that is about The Dead Romantics by Ashley Poston. So this is a really, really popular and well-loved romance book. And I have been recommended it so many times, mainly because I think that a lot of people who enjoy books by Emily Henry or like that kind of adult romance really love this book. And so I had taken this recommendation in like good faith. Like I'm like, okay, I'm probably gonna really love this book. It sounds really fun and interesting, and I heard it was funny and like people really enjoy this book, but I just found the intense quirkiness to be really grating. It wasn't fun. I kind of thought that the quirkiness was going to be like New Girl, and I love New Girl. I love Jess. I really relate to Jess, but this was just on a whole new level, and it wasn't endearing. It wasn't charming. It wasn't funny. It was just grating on my nerves, and like I found myself getting more and more angry as I read the book. And I think it was because like the book didn't take this main character seriously. It really portrayed her as ditzy, as clumsy, as always saying and doing the wrong things, and it almost felt performative in a way. Like the quirkiness felt too intentional. Like the author was trying really, really, really hard to make her quirky and clumsy and a little bit stupid. And I didn't love that. And also the fact that it's Raylo fanfiction also rubbed me the wrong way, because it makes it seem like that's how the author views Ray as a character, that she's just clumsy and ditzy and airheaded and never does the right thing. And I'm like, that's not Ray at all. Like, why would you portray the Ray character in that way? That's really weird. And I've noticed a lot of authors tend to do that with Ray when they're like doing this like Raylo fanfiction thing. and I don't love it. Okay, so we're gonna move on from that because I do not want to fall down that same ranting rabbit hole. So the next book that I was about to talk about is actually a historical romance that is published by Avon, which is an imprint of HarperCollins, but in support of the HarperCollins union strike, I am not going to be talking about this book, so let's move right along. The next book that I DNF'd was another really popular historical romance, and that is A Lady for a Duke by Alexis Hall. This one is about a transgender main character, and she is kind of coming back into her older best friend's life. Not older in like age, but just like older and like they used to be really good friends, but then something happened and they were separated for a really long time, and the main character ends up coming out as transgender and is living her life, and they end up crossing paths again, and it just was too long. I firmly believe that no romance book, regardless of subgenre, should be like over 12 hours long for an audiobook. I think that that's absolutely ridiculous, and there's literally no reason. Like, I cannot imagine the amount of filler chapters that are in that book, and from what I've heard, even from people who enjoyed the book, even from people who gave this book like 4 or 5 stars, they also admit that there are so many filler chapters in that book. So it's not for me. I don't need to read it. I am bummed though, because there is quite a lack of queer historical romance. Like, it's definitely out there, but there's a lack of it, and I really wanted to read this book and enjoy it, so that was kind of a bummer. The next book that I DNF'd was I'm So Not Over You by Kosoko Jackson, and I got pretty far into this book, and I can't really remember exactly why I DNF'd it. I just think that I read a few spoilery reviews, and there were some like plot holes within this book that do not get resolved, and I was a little disappointed by that from seeing that from like reviews of people I trust, and I just decided I have other things I want to read a little bit more. This isn't like a top priority of mine, and so I decided to DNF it. I think that one of the main issues that a lot of people had was that it never really explains why they broke up in the first place, and so it makes a lot of the resolution towards the end of the book feel hollow, and I wasn't into that. That doesn't seem like something I would enjoy. The next book that I DNF'd was The Pisces by Melissa Broder, and this is definitely a book that I could see myself picking up again, but I feel like there was like a big reason why I decided to DNF this so quickly, because I believe that I got the ebook, and I was reading the ebook, and there was a reason why I DNF'd it. And it might be something problematic, but I'm not sure. I can't remember if it was like fat phobia or something like that, but I could definitely see myself trying to pick this up again, possibly in the future. I can't really remember exactly why I DNF'd that one. The next book that I DNF'd was Lessons in Chemistry by Bonnie Garmis, and this is like a very popular book. I see this book everywhere. I can't remember if it won a Goodreads Choice Award or not, but I know that it was in the running for one. And this was unfortunately just another case of there being some pretty intense fat phobia within this book that I just was not into. And I feel like so often authors, they use the excuse of, oh, this character's a bad person, so it's fine if the main character is bigoted towards them because they're a bad person. So we can just call them all of these awful like fat phobic names because they're a bad person. And it's like, where's the correlation in that? Like, why do you feel okay to expose that bias that you have against fat people just because that person is like a bad person? Like, can't we just stick to why they're a bad person? Why do we need to bring up anything else about them? Like, you already want to do it anyway. So why are you giving yourself an excuse? Just do it. Hold strong in those bigoted beliefs that you have. You don't need an excuse to be bigoted. You just are. So I really did not like that book, and I don't know why people have not like noticed that before. I guess it's just me. The next book that I ended up DNFing was After Hours on Milagro Street by Angelina M. Lopez, and this book was a little difficult for me. because I kind of went back and forth on whether I wanted to DNF it or not, but it really gave me bad vibes. In the very beginning, it's definitely established that the main female character is this really dominant, very sexual character, and the love interest is kind of a more shy, introverted, less sexual character. And it really put me off in the very beginning, where she is constantly sexually harassing him and coming on to him and kind of like just having this really weird vibe around him, and he's kind of constantly being like, I'm not cool with this, like, let's not do this, like, I don't really want to flirt with you at this moment, or I don't really want to engage with you in this. And she just like doesn't hear him, or like doesn't like register that he's saying no and continues to sexually harass him until they finally sleep together. I didn't love that. I know that a lot of readers found that to be like sexy or like whatever. That's not sexy to me. That's not like attractive to me at all. So it really just put me off of the book altogether. So I ended up DNFing that one. The next one that I DNF'd was Good Girl Complex by Elle Kennedy. It just was really not my cup of tea. Like, it was major Outer Banks vibes, and I don't like that show. I'm not into it, so wasn't into the book either. The next one was The Proposal by Jasmine Guillory, and I actually just DNF'd this book because I felt like it was taking me way too long to read it. And I was like, you know what, maybe I'll try to give it another chance in a few more months and see where I'm at when it comes to this book. And that's basically what I'm doing. So we're gonna give it a little bit of time, and maybe I can come back to it and thoroughly enjoy it. But for now, it is DNF'd. The next book that I DNF'd was The No-Show by Beth O'Leary, and this one is a super popular romance book as well, and I just could not stand this dude. Oh my god, he was absolute human garbage, and these poor women continued to give him 20,000 chances. Do absolutely none of these women have any sort of self-respect? Like, I don't get it. Like, what's the point of this book? I'm sure that there's a point, and I'm sure that it's kind of like a John Tucker Must Die situation, but it's done so poorly. It is done so poorly. Like, I did not care about any of these women. They did not warm themselves up to me very quickly at all in this book, and the man is just absolute trash. Like, there's no reason why they should have ever even been attracted to him in the first place. He's so mediocre. These women, not interesting at all. No personalities. They all kind of melted together for me. They all were like the same person. Excuse my appearance, but I did want to make the note that I actually have read a few reviews for The No-Show. I actually read a lot of reviews for The No-Show because it was really hard to find spoilery reviews, like reviews that were going to tell me what happens. And so I did find out what happens at the end of the book, and it actually makes me hate the book even more. So if I had continued, I probably would have given it 1 star, if not less than that, because what? Why? I hate when books do that kind of thing, especially when they do it so clumsily as Beth O'Leary did. It just doesn't work. It doesn't work. You need to set it up differently. Like, you can't do that. It's just, no. And my point still stands. Joseph, the main character, is an absolute numbnut and absolutely not deserving of any of these women's times of day. That doesn't make any sense, but you know what I mean. The next book that I DNF'd was Night of the Mannequins by Stephen Graham Jones, and this was the wrong book to start off reading Stephen Graham Jones. I figured that out pretty quickly. This book is just not for me. It's a horror novella, and it is told from the perspective of a teenage boy, which it just reminded me of why I don't read books about teenage boys. The next book that I DNF'd was Anatomy by Dana Schwartz, and this book was definitely a big disappointment because I did really enjoy it in the beginning, but as we, you know, snail crawled into the middle of the book, I I was done with it. I could not connect to this story. I was kind of expecting it to be more like Stalking Jack the Ripper, which I absolutely love, and it kind of has a very similar premise, but it just really stuck to the science a little bit too much for me and got really dry really fast. So I just wasn't into it. I couldn't connect to it. And I don't know, it wasn't for me. Again, this is another HarperCollins book. It's actually published by Graden House, which is an imprint of HarperCollins, and we are just not going to talk about it and move along. The next one was Easy Beauty by Chloe Cooper Jones, and I know that I have like a big reason why I decided to DNF it, so let me look at my review because I know that I definitely posted one. I hate the new layout for Goodreads because I never know where my review is. Oh, here it is. I ended up DNFing this book at the 24% mark, and I said I didn't get far into this book mainly because I felt like I wasn't really the audience for it. It genuinely felt like this was a subtweet to her friends, family, and the people who knew her personally / in passing, but in book form. I almost felt like I was invading on a conversation I wasn't supposed to be privy to, and I'm really bummed. I've been trying to find the right moment to read this book for months, and I finally get to it, and I feel like I'm not supposed to be reading it. And at the end of the day, I knew that the way this memoir was written just wasn't going to vibe well with me, and I didn't want to finish it just to give it 2 stars. So that's kind of why I DNF'd it. And really, I did feel like it was kind of just a subtweet meant for the people who have wronged her in her life, and it wasn't really meant for me. It wasn't really meant for anybody else. And I think that she probably should have just written an email to them, honestly. Like, I think that she should have just kept it between her and her friends and her family and the people who she feels have wronged her in some way, and kept it at that, because there was no substance to that memoir, unfortunately. The next book that I DNF'd was Finding Gene Kelly by Tori Jean, and this one I was really excited about because it is romance, it has a plus-size main character, and it sounded really, really cute. But unfortunately, I just didn't love the representation in this book. And mainly I think it was because I just it was like the last straw. It wasn't necessarily this book in particular, but the book just, you know, had bad luck of coming at the wrong time, of me being like, I'm so sick of people writing fat main characters who are just obsessed with food, who their job revolves around food in some way. All they talk about are like the snacks that they want to eat or the next meal that they're gonna have or whatever. And I'm just like, do we always have to be portrayed that way? Like, I don't go through my life doing that. Like, of course, sometimes I get excited about a snack or I get excited about my next meal, but I'm not constantly talking about what I'm going to eat or like what I want to eat or what I'm going to make or whatever. And like, our lives don't always revolve around food, just like everybody else. Yeah, that was kind of a big disappointment for this book. The next book that I DNF'd was Wintering by Catherine May. It just wasn't connecting with me. I wanted something a little bit different from this book, and I didn't realize it was going to be kind of more like a memoir style. And I don't know who Catherine May is. I have no idea. And I just wasn't really getting anything from the book like I thought I was going to. And the last 2 books that I DNF'd in 2022 were both Christmas romances from Kindle Unlimited, and the first one was 'Tis the Season for Revenge, and the second one was Merry Xmas. And I did not like either of these books. I actually have Kindle Unlimited until like May, I believe. And I really have been wanting to find some books on Kindle Unlimited that I'm going to love, that I'm going to really enjoy, and that give me a reason to open up my Kindle. And these 2 just were not it. I did not like them, and yeah, that's all I really have to say about those books. There wasn't really anything of substance to say. With Merry Xmas, I think that the reason why I decided to DNF it was because of the way that the main character was being treated. So basically, the main character, she hasn't really come home from the holidays a lot because she's been super busy with work. She is like a news anchor, she works for a news station, and she just hasn't really had the time to come back home for the holidays. And so one year there, she decides to come back home and kind of do like a hometown special for her news station and brings them all along. And she shows up at her childhood home and her ex-boyfriend is there and kind of is acting like he's part of the family and that like he belongs there. And the thing is that like they had a really painful breakup. He broke up with her. He was not very kind about it. He wasn't very thoughtful with it. And lo and behold, her parents are like siding with him. Like they think that he's fantastic, that he's great, that she's just overreacting, that she's being really sensitive. And they don't really care that she feels super uncomfortable living in the same house as the ex-boyfriend that completely shattered and broke her heart. And her mom is just like in love with this boyfriend for some reason, like acting like he's her son or whatever. And I totally get that like this guy's parents have like, I don't know if it was recently passed away, but like passed away in the past like few years. But like, come on, like that's your daughter and she's like visibly upset that he's there, and he doesn't need to be there. It's not like he doesn't have a house or like that he's like so broke that he needs to like sleep on their couch or whatever. Like they're just doing this because they like him a lot. And she's like, I really do not feel comfortable living in the same house as this guy, and like why are you taking his side? Why are you putting his feelings and everything else like above mine? It's really weird. So I had to DNF that book. I hated it so much. So yeah, those were the books that I DNF'd in the year of 2022, and I felt like I really wanted to give those books a lot of time because I didn't really talk a lot about them like in the middle of the year, because I don't really mention the books that I DNF when I DNF them, and I don't talk about them in wrap-ups. So I felt like I kind of wanted to go through all of those books and explain why I DNF them. So now I just kind of want to quickly mention some of the books that I did not like this year, which I feel like there weren't too many, but definitely want to start off with Winter Song by S.J. Jones. Oh my gosh, I hated that book so much. I think I gave it like 2 stars or something like that. I just could not stand this main character who was so insecure. She was constantly talking about how ugly and disgusting and unlovable she is, and I'm just like, we need to stop. We need to stop. Like, please get some self-confidence here because it is annoying. The next one I really didn't like was Fable by Adrienne Young, and it was mainly because I felt like this book, nothing happened. I got so far into it. I got like 65 or like 70% of the way through this book. Nothing had happened up until that point, and I was just like, is this just like a lead up to the second book? Like, what is going on here? I felt like the first and the second books should have just been combined into one and like edit out a lot of the filler chapters, because the pacing in that book was absolutely just awful. It was horrible. The next book I definitely want to talk about actually are kind of like 2 books that I read, and they were both by Nora Ephron, and I did not like those books. Oh my gosh, they were just absolutely grating. And like, it was all just basically about like how getting old sucks, and like she's so ugly and fat and disgusting and like all that kind of stuff. And I'm just like, is there anything insightful that you have to say? Like, are you just going to complain about how old and gross and disgusting you are, or what's going on? Because no. I would much rather just watch one of her movies. Like, her movies are fantastic. Like, I don't need to read her every thought in any of her books. The next one I didn't like was The Last True Poets of the Sea. I really don't remember what I rated any of these books. I'm sure they were like 2 stars. But oh my god, I did not like that book. It was not for me. And you know what? At the end of the day, it was kind of something that I didn't expect it to be. I went into this book with like completely wrong expectations, and that's partly on me, but it's also partly on the way that it was marketed and the way that it was recommended to me, because I asked for recommendations for books that are similar to the album Folklore by Taylor Swift, and I got The Last True Poets of the Sea as a recommendation, and it didn't live up to that at all. And I don't understand where the recommendation came from, because the way that it's written is very straightforward. There's like hardly any metaphor at all. It's very dry. And that's not what I get from folklore at all. Folklore is very metaphorical, it's very flowery, it's very beautiful. And I didn't get it. I don't understand where the recommendation came from. So it was a really big bummer. The next book that I absolutely hated in 2022 was Finley Donovan is Killing It. Oh my god, I feel like I read a completely different book than everybody else did, because literally everyone else loves that book. Just they eat it all up. They can't wait for the sequel. They can't wait for like the third book, I think. And I'm just like, did we read a completely different book? Because I don't understand why people liked this. It felt so wishy-washy. The main character could not decide what she wanted for even 1 second. Like, she would decide what she wanted on one page, and then literally on the next page would completely act like she hadn't made that decision. And I'm just like, what are we doing here? Why are we reading about this character who cannot make a decision to save her fucking life? It was awful. It was so bad. I don't understand the hype for this one. If you enjoyed it, all kudos to you, because I wish that I was you. I wish that I had enjoyed that book as much as you did and loved it. And you know, I love the cover. I love the concept. I wanted to love this book so bad, and I'm so bummed that I did not like this book. The next one that I did not like was Down Comes the Night by Alison Saft. It was just a case of bad marketing, and I feel like the author, the publisher, everything like that, like, they did not understand what this book was. They really wanted to market it as a gothic fantasy, but the gothic elements were barely there. It was so light-handed on the gothic elements and very heavy-handed on like the sci-fi fantasy elements. It definitely felt more like a typical dystopian book to me rather than a gothic fantasy. And of course, we cannot finish this video without mentioning the fact that I read two, count them, two Colleen Hoover books. I read Confess and I read Ugly Love, and I will link down below the video where I read and review those books, because I feel like it says a lot of what I want to say. But I will definitely never be reading another Colleen Hoover book ever again. You could not pay me to read another one of her books. I cannot stand her writing. I can't stand her characters. I can't stand the choices that she makes. I don't like it. It's not for me. I'm sure it's for other people. It's not for me. I need more substance, and I need less abusive tendencies and less talk about your baby's giant balls. Alright, so those were all the books that I DNF'd in 2022 and all the books that I just did not like in 2022. Again, if you enjoyed any of these books, more power to you. I'm so glad that you found books that you love and that you feel really passionately about. I'm not trying to attack anybody. I'm not trying to attack any of these authors or the books or anything like that. I'm just sharing my own opinions, and I feel like we are all entitled to have our opinions. And I have no desire in changing your opinions. So there we go. I hope you all enjoyed this video. I definitely enjoyed getting to rant a little bit about all the books that I did not like last year. I didn't do this, I think, in either 2020 or 2021. I can't remember, but it's fun to be back doing this because I definitely had a lot to say. So I hope you all enjoyed this video, and if you did, go ahead and give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. Also, go ahead and follow me on Instagram, Twitter, Goodreads, Storygraph, TikTok. All the links will be down below, and I will see you all in my next video. Bye! Ooh,